All right, good morning, traders. Today is April 15th, 2025. Yes, the dreaded tax day. All right, good morning to everybody out there in Cyberland, Digital Land, Podcast Land, all of you out there that subscribe to my content or follow me or leave kind comments. I love that. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time and attention to my content. I don't take that for granted. I hope to provide valuable content, and I look to improve every single day. So I want to just say thank you. I really appreciate that. All right, this morning, my SPY pivot is 539.50. Above it, I'm a bull. Below it, I'm a bear. All of the Fab 5 are still in daily downtrends. That means they're making lower highs and lower lows. SPY, QQQ, FNGA, Diamond Dow, yesterday all made higher highs and higher lows, closing over bullish crosses, but under their falling 17 EMAs. IWM made a higher high and a higher low, closing inside a bearish trap under a falling 17 EMA. SPY closed with a 2-hour uptrend, and at the very last 10-minute candle, we have a 10-minute downtrend going into the close yesterday. Gold still in a daily uptrend, big high flyer. Gold made a lower high and a lower low, closing over a bullish trap over the 17 EMA. Silver still in a downtrend, made a higher high and a higher low, closing over a bullish cross and over the falling 17 EMA. USO made a higher high and a higher low, closing inside a bearish trap under the 17 EMA. UNG made an outside day. That's a higher high and a lower low, closing under a bearish trap under the 17 EMA. US dollar index still in a downtrend. We love that. Closed near the 99.78 area. SPY max pain is 535 for today. Okay, with the put to call ratio of 1.6 puts to each call that expires today at 4:15. Okay, that's just for the options that expire today. Okay, that's not for the overall market. All right, so hey, let's go take a look at some charts. All right, got a question here. We're going to come back to gold. Is this an MMRP? It is forming like one. Okay, got two candles up, two candles pause. I would want to see two candles test the resistance brick, but we're not getting that yet. Okay, so it may not play out like an MMRP. Irregardless, that's still bullish. All right, closing up there over the bullish trap over the rising 17. That's an all-time high. Now, what it may play out as could trade as a birthday trade. All right, in other words. But we got to see a base. We don't have a base yet. So no birthday trade on that. No MMRP until we test the base right here. And then we may see an MMRP develop. All right, but I'd like to see it test the resistance to hold as support on that one. So here's gold. Higher low. This is yesterday's candle, the green one, not the red one. That's today's. All right, higher low, higher high. No, excuse me. Lower high, lower low, but closing over the bullish trap. See this yellow 3 EMA? When that's up over the white 8 EMA, that's a bullish trap. When it's under, it's a bearish trap. So this would be a bearish trap down here. That's a bullish trap because the 3 is up and over the white 8 EMA there. Okay, so bullish trap over the rising, closing over the bullish trap and over the rising 17. That's the green dots here, over the rising 17 EMA right there. All right, so in terms of all-time high anchored VWAP, it's under the all-time high anchored VWAP, but then again, I mean, we just made it like 48 hours ago. So all right, so there's gold. I just wanted to answer that question for the room. Let's go take a look at SPY. Let's pull it up on the 10-minute chart. All right, here we are on the 10-minute chart. Let's look at where we closed yesterday. Okay, you can see, let's go to this one. All right. You can see price, the 3 is underneath the 8 at the closing 10-minute candle. So we have a 10-minute downtrend going into the close. It's a possible exhaustion candle. All right, so could go back in the other direction. All right, so, but that is possible. 10-minute downtrend going into the close. All right, for SPY. On the 2-hour. All right, you can see right here on the 2-hour. Let's just pick it up on something a little bit cleaner. All right, 2-hour. We've got the 3 EMA on top of the 8. All right, so we got a bullish trap right there. All right, so we got a 2-hour uptrend going into the close. This was an MMRP, right, on the 78-minute chart. I'm going to explain it to everybody, all right? Okay, MMRP involves an igniting move. All right, so I'm going to start out. We have a 378-minute candle MMRP. So here's the igniting move right there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And they break through this resistance, all right, which is right up overhead, right about there. Okay, they break through that resistance. And now they come back and they test this resistance. Look how deep they get. All right, that's normal. All right, so they test the resistance right there to see if the resistance is now going to hold as support. All right, so they're going to test it and see if it's going to hold as support. So that's a 3-candle move. Sometimes there's a 3-candle pause up here as well as a test. All right, this one happened to use the 3-candle test and the pause all at the same time. And then we get 3 price advancement moves. Again, 3 candles to each price advancement move. All right, so there's 1. Now the next 3 should make higher highs, a higher high and a higher low. Not each candle as a group of 3. See that? Higher high, higher high, higher low. Same thing on the third set. All right? Right there. Okay? Higher low, see the low? And a higher high. Now we're dealing with the fourth set. All right? Got the higher low. I don't know if we're going to get the higher high. I got to say, I don't think so. But hey, you know, the day is just beginning, so we'll see where this thing closes. It very well may close up here. All right? If it's an equal high up here, it's still in play. All right, I only count on 3. There's usually sometimes there are additional price advancement moves. I only count on 3. When I get 4, 5, and 6, I'm tickled. But honestly, I only count on 3. But if they make an equal high up here, all right, look for the 5th one to actually make another higher low and a higher high. All right, but right now we're not there yet. Okay, so don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Got to wait and see where this one closes. All right, so that's the MMRP. It deals with an igniting move, a pullback which breaks through resistance, all right, or support. It could be a bearish igniting move too. All right, breaks through, comes back, tests, and then you get 3 price advancement moves right up the top there. Okay, each one. Now notice there's a red candle here and red candles here. Hey, that happens. What we're looking at is groups of 3 making higher lows, all right, and moving up. Higher lows, and higher lows. That's what we're looking at as a group of 3, all right? So there's SPY. On the 78-minute chart, and that was a 3-candle 78-minute chart, MMRP. Just did the 2-hour. Let's go take a look at the daily chart. MMRP stands for Market Makers Reversal Pattern. In case you didn't know, all right, on the scratch. Well, that's busy. Isn't that busy? It's way too busy. But we got a downtrend. All right, so price action for yesterday, all right, is this candle right here. Higher low, higher high, closing over a bullish cross, but underneath the falling 17 EMA. Okay. See, over a bullish cross. See, the 3 EMA is crossing the falling 8 here. Okay. Over a bullish cross, but under, see the red dots? We're closing under the red dots. So under the red dots, that is the 17 EMA right there. Let's take this off. Don't need it. All right. So there's SPY. All right. So as far as price action goes, all right, you can see we're closing right here at the midpoint. Okay. So we'll take that, put the quad lines in. All right. You can see we're closing at the midpoint. All right. So that's neutral. All right. You go up, you give it up. That's neutral. Same thing if you go down. If you go down and you give it up, that's neutral as well. All right. If they stay in the lower third, all right, these are quadrants. All right. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. If they stay in the lower third, that's bearish. If they're up in the upper third, that's bullish. All right. So just neutral right now. And they're on the bearish side of neutrality. Okay. So there's SPY. Now, they're in a downtrend because they made a lower high and a lower low. We have a lower high right here. We still haven't made a lower low. If we happen to take out this lower high, guess what? We now have ourselves an uptrend. Don't get excited. It's just a label, all right? But there's SPY, all right? If we take out that lower high right there, all right, we will have negated the downtrend and converted an uptrend. All right, price right now still in a downtrend, but it's not moving down. You're getting an you're getting a pullback in your downtrend right now. That's what we're receiving, is a pullback. Okay, making lower highs and lower lows, and that happens. You have a pullback in the downtrend. Pullback goes too far, and guess what? It negates the downtrend and converts an uptrend. All right, so there's SPY on the daily chart. All right, on the weekly chart. All right, it's be nice to see. Boy, does that look like an exhaustion candle. All right, on the weekly chart, okay, you can see, all right, we didn't make any lower highs, but we did make some lower lows. We have a low here. We made a lower low. We have a low here, well here, and we made a lower low. So that puts us in a weekly downtrend. All right, on the monthly chart, okay, wow, big tail. Price action has to take out this low down here below the 17. Okay, so long ways to go to get us into a monthly downtrend. So we're still currently in a monthly uptrend. We're just experiencing a pullback. Will it be a 2-candle pullback or a 3-candle pullback? Notice here's a monthly uptrend, all right, that had a 3-candle pullback. All right, will we get a 2-candle pullback or a 3-candle pullback? Only time will tell. All right, right now we're still in a weekly downtrend. All right, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. And we're still in a monthly uptrend. All right, so there's SPY for us. Okay, for the game plan for today, let's go take a peek at the game plan. To do that, we'll head on over to the 10-minute chart. All right, for the game plan for today, let's move stuff around here so you can see. All right, I like 2 days till expiration Friday options. All right. It just so happens that this Friday we're closed. So these are going to be 2 DTE Thursday options. Just for this week, because Friday we're off and we're closed. All right. Or I like 10 DTE Friday options. Okay. 2 DTE, I should probably put Thursday. Okay. or 10 DTE Friday options. All right. I like those because they got higher open interest. Thursdays and, well, actually this Thursday and next Friday is going to have more open interest than the other days throughout the week. All right. I like the open interest. Open interest for me equals more liquidity. More liquidity means tighter bid-ask spread in addition to less slippage. All right. That's why I like Friday or Thursday, because of this Thursday options. All right. A lot of volatility in the market right now. I usually like $2 to $5 out of the money, but because of the high volatility and the increase in IV, all right, implied volatility, I have to trade $10 to $20 out of the money as opposed to $2 to $5 out of the money. All right. The reason I like the out of the money, all right, I'm not going to get the performance that I would let me just say, I'm not going to get the performance that I would for an in the money option, but they're a little bit cheaper. So I'll give up some performance to get a little less risk. All right. So I'm not going to get the performance that I would on an in the money option. All right. But I'm also taking on less risk. All right. And they're a little bit cheaper for my small account. Oh, and by the way, after Easter, I will be starting a new $27,000 trading account for those of you that want to follow along. All right, going to be a new one. I've already 10x this one. Let's go ahead and start another one on right after Easter when we get back from that. All right, so I like 10-minute downtrends under VWAP. And I like 10-minute uptrends over VWAP. SPY pivot for today, 539.50. All right. And then if we have price, get a 10-minute downtrend below 535.20. All right. So a 10-minute downtrend under 535.20 would be a bearish entry for me. And a bullish entry for a 10-minute uptrend over the pivot. All right. Price breaking through 542.70. That would be the green erases red event. So on here, I'm just going to pull out my drawing tools one more time here. So you can see here's a red pullback. See the high and the low. All right. So for me, all right, what makes it a green erases red? Okay, see that red pullback? So if green comes along, I don't know where we are right now. Let's say we're right here. See where that blue marker is? All right, so if green comes along, we want the green. All right, so if green comes along and stops going down right here, all right, it's got to stop going down. All right, and comes back in and erases all of this red move and goes higher, that would be a green erases red entry. Now, we don't know how high it's going to go, all right, but we do know that there's 100% retracement from this high, okay? We don't know how high it's going to go, but that would be the green erases red entry right there. It could go up to the top of that wick, peter out, and roll over on us. We don't know, all right? But we do know we're seeing a bullish engulfing move, all right? In other words, price pulled back, and the bulls came right back and bought it all the way back up. All right, so if they're buying it up, there's a possibility, all right, that they will have a follow-through with that move. And that's why we call it the green erases red entry, all right? So for the bearish entry, all right, let's take a look at the boxes one more time. All right, so now we have a bullish entry, a bullish, see this, we went from here up to this high. Okay, see pies pulled back, and then we rallied from this low up to this high. Well, it's the same thing for the bears, okay? If the bears come along and erase everything that the bulls did and more, that's going to be my red erases green entry, okay? See, the bulls rallied from this low up to this high. So I don't count wicks and tails. So that makes the bottom of this support brick. See how all those candles line up? Like right in a row, and they all kind of stop, almost all of them kind of stop right at the same spot. Well, if we break that spot, in other words, we break through that brick wall, okay, I can foresee price possibly trading down to this breakup candle low. All right, but so that's going to be my red erases green entry. See the green rally up, and then if the bears come back up and chase it back down, all right, and they may chase it down to make a lower low. So that's my red erases green below 535.20 right there. Okay, so red erases green under 535.20. Okay, green erases red over 542.70. All right, right now it's looking like we may get a bearish entry. Okay, again, under 535, under 539.50, I'm a bear. Above it, I'm a bull. All right, that's kind of where VWAP left off yesterday. All right, and there's bulls up here and bears down here. Okay, well, we want the bulls to show up here. All right, we don't really want the bears to show up here, but that's where they seem to be showing up. All right, so there's the SPY game plan. Let's take a look at the QQQ game plan. All right, and trash that out, and then we'll go to the QQQ chart. Okay, QQQ chart, you see it, same thing. Here's that red pullback. All right, if the bulls come back in and chase it all the way back up through here, that will be a green erases red event. So over 561.30, right up there. QQQ pivot for today, 458.40. Above it, I'm a bull. Below it, I'm a bear. Notice VWAP from yesterday. Okay, you can see where price pulled back to this point right there and then bounced off of it. Okay, you can see where price gets underneath it and then rallies up above it. All right, see how they come back and test this area? All right, so there's QQQ on the 10-minute chart. All right, underneath, this would be a red erases green if the bears chase price. See the bulls pushed it up to here. Okay, now notice the bulls never got the higher high. Okay, notice they didn't get a higher high here. See that? They came down, they got a higher low, but they never got the higher high. Okay, so what happens? We went off and made a lower low. All right, and now we're making a possible lower high here. All right, so it's possible that the bears are inspired to make a lower low. All right, lower low, because they failed to make the higher high. So we'll see what happens. So the bearish red erases green entry is right underneath the brick of candles right here. Okay, at 453.55. Again, QQQ pivot, 458.40. Above it, I'm a bull. Below it, I'm a bear. Okay, red erases green right underneath, 453.55 right here. Okay, so there's 10-minute. There's the QQQ game plan. Again, on the QQQ game plan, I like the same options. All right, I like the 2 days till expiration, Thursday options, only this Thursday because we're off on Friday, and the 10 DTE Friday options. Again, I like $10 to $20 out of the money. Okay, I also like, all right, 10-minute uptrends over VWAP, and I like 10-minute downtrends under VWAP. Okay, I like to stay out of consolidation. If we find ourselves where the 3 and the 8 are crossing multiple times before noon, we're probably headed for a chop day. All right, so we're probably headed for a chop. If you see price cross VWAP 2 or 3 times before noon, you're in a chop day. All right, same thing as if you see the 3 cross the 8 multiple times before noon, you're probably in a chop day. and you probably just want to wait for that chop to play out, because what they're doing is consolidation. All right, and then after the consolidation, normally comes a pretty good sized move. So wait for the consolidation to end and look for the breakout. All right, there's QQQ. That's the game plan on the 10-minute chart. All right, let's go back and look at the QQQ on the scratch. Let's look at it on the daily. Okay, notice the daily still in a downtrend, lower high, lower low. Okay, if they make a higher high, just like SPY, all right, they will negate the downtrend and convert the uptrend. Okay, there's QQQ on the daily chart. All right, yesterday's price action, make sure I get the right candle, higher low, higher high, closing over the bullish cross. See the yellow 3 crossing the 8 here, that makes it a cross. Over the bullish cross, but under, see they closed here, right there. They closed right underneath, see this falling 17. 17 EMA is signified as red dots. So they closed under the 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP, no longer in the lower third, so they're neutral. Okay, you go up, you give it up, you're neutral. You go down, you give it up, you're neutral. Okay, you go down, you give it up and more, that's bullish. You go up, you give it up and more, that's bearish. All right, right now we're in neutral. Okay, not in the lower third, not in the upper third. Okay, so there's QQQ on the daily chart. Still in a downtrend, all right, but not moving down, just like SPY. Okay, you are experiencing a pullback in the downtrend. And like I said earlier, all right, it could be that this pullback goes a little too far and negates the downtrend and converts the uptrend by making a higher high. We'll see, only time will tell. There's QQQ, all right? Let's go take a look at Diamond Dow. All right, Diamond Dow almost, let's see what the high is here. The high is 407.79 and the high is 407.86. They actually just negated the downtrend. Oh, but that 17 didn't go, that candle didn't go over the 17 EMA, so it doesn't count. So they have to come up here and negate. See how this candle goes up over the 17 EMA? All right, I got to see a clear peak, all right, not just a twinge, all right? So right there, price action for Diamond Down, not still in a downtrend, all right, because we don't have a peak that breaks through the 17, all right? So Diamond Down, higher low, higher high, closing over a bullish cross, all right, but under, notice, under the red dot, all right? So that's under that 17 EMA. Again, moving down, giving it up, that's neutral. Closing under the all-time high anchored VWAP, under the uptrend line. Again, you move down and you give it up, that's neutral. Same thing as if you move up and give it up, that's neutral. Let's take a look at IWM. Okay. See, I like to see a peak that breaks through the 17. So that one counts. All of this won't count. So if they happen to go higher than this candle, they'll still be in a downtrend until they break that peak up there. Okay, so here's IWM. Higher low, higher high. Closing over a bearish trap, but under the falling 17. And under the all-time high anchored VWAP. That's the pink line. Down here in quadrant 1, that makes IWM bearish. All right, so there's IWM. FNGA. Higher low, higher high. Okay, closing over the bullish cross, but under the falling 17. That's the red dots. Closing under the all-time high anchored VWAP. That's the pink line. closing in the lower third. Okay, notice they're in quadrant 1 when they closed. It's still bearish, making lower highs and lower lows. Okay, still in a downtrend. There's FNGA. All right, let's go take a look at our technicals. All right, price action for yesterday. We bounced up here, all right, into the buy zone. We got tossed out by the bears. All right, went airborne all the way down to the seller's chop zone. All right, found some footing here. Tried to climb back into the buyer's chop zone. Got tossed out again. Okay, and then we climbed back up here, making a higher low here. All right, which brought us back up here to make a higher high. Then made another higher low. Climbed back into the buy zone, only to get tossed out again by the bears, back into the buyer's chop zone. So we ended the day up here in the buyer's chop zone. What we did do yesterday was finish the high and made a higher low. Okay? What we didn't get was another higher high. Okay? Instead, we got like an equal high or a lower high right there on T2122 15-minute chart. Okay? So, kind of bullish, obviously over the midpoint here, okay, at the 50-yard line, but price still not quite bullish enough to be in the buy zone. All right, so on the buyer side, on the bullish side of neutrality, so that's a good sign. Let's take a look at T2123. This thing looks like, if you were looking at an EKG, this thing looks like a flat line. All right, it's not really. If you zoom in, you can see a little bit of movement. All right, it does look like it's flat line. I'm just going to call it comatose right now. All right, because you zoom out and it's a flat line, but you zoom in, you can see very little brain activity going on. Okay, so there's T2123. What we got is a little mini bull flag. See the little mini bull flag inside of a big bear flag right here. Notice price action still caught underneath the falling 200 SMA. Let me just say they linger here too long, and that 200 SMA is going to come up like a 500-pound gorilla, all right, and jump on price and probably push it lower. That's a possibility. All right, like to see price get inspired and start shooting up through this falling 200 SMA. Okay, right here we had a bear flag. We lingered too long and we had a breakdown. You linger too long, and what happens is investors start to give up hope. All right, they don't see any momentum. They don't see a bounce happening, okay? And what happens is they begin to sell. And guess what? Selling begets more selling, all right? We could experience the same thing we did back here in the middle of March, okay? Investors like to see a V-bottom. Notice we're not getting any V-bottoms. Okay, what we're not getting, all right, we're not getting any bearish gaps right now, but we're not moving up and we're not moving down. Okay, we're just kind of flatline comatose. The thing that we're not doing is we're not filling any of the prior bearish gaps, and we're not making any higher highs. Okay, so at this time, it's kind of in a coma. Right there, T2123. Okay, not making any higher highs, not moving up, not moving down. But the longer they stay here, the more investors will give up hope. The more likely investors will give up hope and start to sell off. All right, so we'll see what happens. All right, and could develop into another igniting move to the downside, just like what we got here. All right, so that's T2123. Okay, investors don't like to see flat lines. they like to see momentum to the upside. And we don't have any of that. We're not making any higher highs. And we're not filling any prior bearish gaps. So not looking, the outlook is not good. On one hand, we're not moving down, all right? But we're not moving up either, all right? That's the facts. T2123 on the 3-bar chart. Again, price action, big hockey stick like we had before, all right? Or big bear flag, all right? When the fabric gets a little bit long for the flagpole, guess what happens? Investors lose hope or confidence, all right, and begin to sell off, and you get a sell-off. Okay, another thing that causes price to not bounce is uncertainty. So when you've got government policy that you're uncertain with, in other words, tariffs, okay, the market doesn't like uncertainty. Anytime we get talk about tariffs, if they're not going away, all right, it causes panic and unrest and uncertainty in the markets, and then you tend to get a price performance like this, where you go down and you linger to the right, and then you have another breakdown. Okay, we could be headed for another one just like it. We'll see what happens. All right, again on the 3-bar chart, 3 more red candle bars, still underneath the fading 200 SMA. All right, still underneath all-time high anchored VWAP, as well as a couple of prior still underneath all-time high, as well as underneath a couple of prior all-time highs. Right there. That's T2123. FNGA or FNGU. Okay, yesterday's price action. All right, little green gap up. All right, notice the bears filled the gap. All right, bulls couldn't keep the gap open. All right, so price action gapped up, little green, little red, bears filled the gap. Come back, failed to make a higher high, so they're just consolidating. I like the consolidation over, see the falling 200 SMA. I like that. That's kind of bullish up there. All right. I do like that. I don't like that we failed to fill, all right, this bearish gap right here. Okay. We should have been able to fill that. All right. We didn't fill it, but we are consolidating underneath it. I would rather see tighter consolidation leaning on it. All right. I'm not seeing that yet. But all in all, consolidation over prior consolidation is a bullish environment. Okay, consolidation over prior consolidation is a bullish environment. All right, so I like what I'm seeing here. All right, so we're making higher lows. Okay, we're making higher lows and higher highs. Got a higher low. I'm still waiting for the higher high. I hope this is not a failure. All right, so there's FNGA. All right, let's take a look at a few sectors, then we hit the economic package. Let me run through this quickly here. All right, I'm just going to go real quick. All right, start off with XLE. All right, it's getting kind of late. All right, higher low, higher high, closing in the bearish trap. See the trap? Under the 17. You're in quadrant 1. That's bearish. USO. Okay, higher low, higher high, closing in the trap. Quadrant 1, that's bearish. Okay, under the 17, still in the bearish trap. All right, under the midpoint, below the lower third, that's bearish. UNG. Natural gas. Outside day. Higher high, lower low, closing under a bearish trap, under a falling 17, under an uptrend line, under the midpoint, but over this 12-month high anchored VWAP. Okay, you move up, you give it up, that's neutral. Notice the head and shoulders pattern. Here's the left shoulder right here. This would be the left arm. Here's the right shoulder right here. This will be the right arm. We'll see if the right arm extends down to where the left arm left off. All right? There's UNG, head and shoulders. That's the head up there. Right shoulder, left shoulder. All right? Let's take a look at GLD. I think we already did this one. Lower high, lower low, closing over a bullish trap over the 17 up here in quadrant 4. That's bullish. Target 315.66. All right, that's GLD. SLV. All right, price action. Higher low, higher high, closing over a bullish cross over a 12-year high anchored VWAP, over a 6-month high anchored VWAP. This doubles as both. Up here in the upper third, I'm going to give it to him. All right? In the upper third, that's bullish, SLV. All right, let's take a look at SMH. All right, SMH closing over the bullish cross, but under the 17 in the lower third, that's bearish. All right, XLK. All right, higher high, higher low, closing over the bullish cross, but under the falling 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. All right, no longer in the lower third, so that's neutral. XLF. Okay, higher high, higher low, closing over the bullish cross, under the falling 17. See the pink line, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, not in the upper third, not in the lower third. You move down, you give it up, that's neutral. Let's take a look at IYT. Higher low, higher high, closing over the bullish trap, over the bearish trap. That's a bearish trap. Under the 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP, in the lower third, still bearish on the transports. So in order to have a decent rally, you got to have at least two of the three. Financials, all right, financials are just neutral and not in an uptrend. Transports are bearish and not in an uptrend. Technology is neutral and not in an uptrend. Okay, so we don't have any of those to have a robust rally. We don't have T2123, not even on the smaller time frame. Okay, see it's comatose, and we don't have the big caps. We do have the big caps, but I'm still looking for that higher high up here, or the challenge of the all-time high anchored VWAP. Big caps are starting to form something. All right, if they can keep this going, the momentum, that would be nice. Still haven't seen the higher high yet from 2 or 3 days ago off of this higher low. Okay, still need to see that. Still need to see consistent higher highs and higher lows. Okay, today we're not seeing it yet. All right, let's go take a look at the economic package, then wrap this up. All right, SPY max pain for today. That's for the options that expire today, 535. Put to call ratio, 1.61 puts for each call that expires today. Okay, on the dollar's making lower highs and lower lows. Notice we broke major support right here. See that brick of support candles right there? We just spiked it right there. If we get underneath, this would be could be a bearish MMRP where price gets underneath support, comes back, tests it, and then rolls over even further. All right, so there's lower highs, lower lows. All right, it's in a downtrend. We like that. Makes our goods and services more affordable and more competitive for foreign commerce. All right, tariffs don't help. All right, on the earnings today, let's take a look at today's Tuesday. Johnson & Johnson this morning, $365 billion. Bank of America, $273 billion. Citicorp, $116 billion. PNC Financial, $60 billion. Again, more familiar names, all right, but nothing that's going to move the markets like these guys up here. All right, these are all reporting in the morning, all right. On Wednesday, all right, ASML Holdings, $255 billion. That's $250 billion. All right. Abbott Labs, $215 billion. All right. In the morning, along with ASML. All right. Prologis, $87 billion. And then more Bancorp, $58 billion. Okay. Not really a big market mover there, but they'll make a little bit of a dent in their sectors. All right. Thursday, Taiwan Semiconductors. All right. That's $814 billion. All right. It's pretty close to $1 trillion. Not quite, but it's there. It's getting up there. All right. They're going to report Thursday morning. All right. That's tech. All right. We need tech to report good so we can start getting at least a good tech run going, because usually technology leads us out of every recession or pullback. You want to see tech lead the way. All right, tech's not leading the way right now. We don't have an uptrend, so we need technology to give us some good numbers so that we can see tech lead us out of this pullback we're in right now. UNH, $500 billion. Okay, $548 billion. Thursday morning, right along Taiwan Semiconductors. They report right alongside them. Netflix, technology in the evening, $392 billion they can report in the evening. Again, we want to see good numbers from Netflix. All right, American Express, $176 billion they report Thursday morning, right along the other side, the other two. All right, Charles Schwab, all right, $139 billion. And then we got Marsh McLellan, $114 billion. All right. The main event's going to be the tech. You want to watch Netflix, and we want to watch semiconductors. If these aren't moving the markets up, I like to see good numbers from Netflix, all right, and Taiwan Semiconductors. All right. Like to see that happen. All right. Because tech will usually lead us out of almost every pullback. Friday, all right. A lot of undetermined. Again, I think again Friday we're closed. All right, so there's not going to be any reporting going on. All right. Remember the markets are closed Friday. All right. So we did an economic calendar. Okay, light week this week because remember we're closed Friday. Today, Empire State Manufacturing at 8:30. Import-export prices 8:30. So it's a light day today. It's actually a light week. There's no main events this week. Tomorrow, retail sales at 8:30, industrial production at 9:15, business inventories at 10, housing market index at 10, petroleum status 10:30, all right, and then a light day. Thursday, housing starts and permits at 8:30, jobless claims at 8:30, Philly Fed manufacturing 8:30, and Friday's normal natural gas report gets moved to Thursday, all right, at 10:30. All right, that's it. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me through this, all right. I'm going to come back in about 35 minutes and open up the markets. Let me get this rendered for everybody out there in podcast land and digital land, all right. So I'll be back in about 30 minutes. If you got a question, drop it in the comments or drop it in the chat. Thank you so much.